Welcome to another episode of Reptile Fight Club. Justin Jr. And with me as always, Chuck, the man, Poland. Say hi to the people.
Hi, people.
How are you doing, my friend?
I am well. It is a Friday today, so
Yeah.
I have my weekend. So
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
I've been stuck in quarantine, so it's all a weekend to me, man.
Dr. Delta.
Yeah, I was listening to NPR, the holiday show, and they said something in there that kind of got me. It's like talking about herp libraries, and we have all these books, and if we've read them, and I'm like, oh crap, I've been sitting in here in quarantine for 10 days watching movies and TV shows, like not reading herp books. I'm like, there's plenty of herp books down there that I could read, and when I get a book, I'll read the chapters that I'm most interested in, or kind of thumb through, but very few of them I've read front to back, cover to cover. So yeah, I brought up my Reptile or Snakes of Arizona, the giant monolithic book from Eco. If you don't have it, I mean, what, $55?
Yeah, it's ridiculously
like 800
cheap
something pages. It's and it's a very well done book.
I believe somebody on the holiday show called it a home defense book.
Yeah, that was Rob, I think.
Yeah. Spot on,
so,
dude.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is a big book, and
it could take out an intruder.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so I got into that, started reading. It's really
Nice.
interesting. I mean, I do kind of gloss over some of the taxonomy stuff. That stuff's can be a little boring sometimes, but also fairly interesting. There's some interesting ones.
I feel you there. I also have the Snakes of Arizona, and then I picked up the book called Fire that.
I got that one too.
Yeah, and I literally have it next to my bed, and I'm like, oh, I should read it. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm so tired. Like during the week, I'm like, I'm so tired, and I like turn on the TV for like a few minutes, and I'm like, I'm going to bed. I'm out, and I just don't pick up the book, and it's like, and it is crazy too, right? Like you don't want to feel like you went from collecting snakes to just collecting books about snakes, right?
Yeah,
you're like,
right.
no, I read this stuff, like, and
you want to benefit from it, not just have it collect dust on a shelf,
Right, exactly. Yeah. And you kind of feel like you're like, well, experience is great and books are great or everything, but if you're not reading it cover to cover and you're just not in it all the time, are you really taking the gross? And maybe you're right, dude. Maybe the spot read is just fine. Read what directly you want to get out of it, and
sure.
I
sometimes
feel like
it's dangerous to get new books, because I find myself like, I got a book on cord uromastics, and so I had read about a bunch of uromastics. I'm like, maybe I want to keep uromastics, but no, I don't want to keep uromastics.
Yeah.
But they're really cool. There's so many cool reptiles, so it's fun to learn about them.
I was a little worried about you at the Super Show. I thought you wanted to keep
so cool
uromastics after that Super Show.
I was tempted. They were nice looking.
You were tempted. You went back over there like cheap. 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you were. Like, I gotta go back over there. I gotta ask him something.
There's just too many cool reptiles. That's the bottom line. But I don't think it's a bad thing to have kind of that broad knowledge. Eric was talking about the keeping and breeding the lizards, or keeping and breeding Australian lizards.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fantastic book. But there's a lot of groups in there that I probably will never keep, or that have a ton of interest in. So I'm not really reading those chapters covered, intensely. I might browse through them or check them out if I see something on a different species that I'm intrigued by. But like I've read all the Agurnia chapters, and like the ones, the spiny-tailed skinks, or the Taliqua, the blue-tongued skinks, and some of the dragons or monitors. I'll read through those chapters as well, because those are the ones that are interesting. Yeah. Geckos, lots of geckos, those kind of things. There's lots of cool species out there, and
that makes sense. As a human, you're interested in what you're interested in, and you crave knowledge on those subjects, and I think.
And a lot of the books, like, not to disparage against them, but they're just kind of the field guides,
Yeah, they're
and
kind of
those are helpful when you're,
yeah.
when you're in Australia and you're trying to identify something. But just to read it, I mean, you're not really. I guess you could memorize it and be really knowledgeable about just a little, very fine,
Mhm.
shallow depth about a lot of different things. But mainly it's just like a picture and a range map. And, kind of most of it's a description of the animal. So if you're looking at it, it might help to identify that animal. But, as far as reading through, it's not the most interesting thing. Some of
Mhm.
the field guides now have like, they talk about the different habitats and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I like something with a little more natural history in there, a little more. And that Social Lives of Reptiles, I started reading that one. I started reading the fire book that you were talking about.
Mhm.
I did start reading that, but before I had the holiday show. So I guess I did start a book, but I only got like a chapter or two in. So I didn't
Yeah.
get that far in. But
And there's a lot
yeah.
of kind of introductory ideas in there, and like I was just kind of looking through the chapters of it, and it goes goes through some pretty basic ideas,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
which is
true.
good. I mean,
It's
that's
good. It's
yeah,
helpful. Well,
absolutely.
and I think a lot of these things go hand in hand with some of the podcasts. Like I listened to Francis Baines on,
Hmm.
I think it was the Animals at Home Network. That guy does a great job at his interviews and the people he brings on and the topics that they discuss. So I think it was kind of his show that might have, like, I had the idea for this podcast, the Fight Club, and then he did a show where he had two people come on and discuss opposite sides of a
Viewpoints.
topic. I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do. And I think he only did the one, so it's like, okay, well, we can still do it. But he had a similar idea with one of his, which was
Yeah.
really cool to see. It was on
Well, it's
animal
good
welfare or
for you
something.
to kind of watch a test run, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, it was really a cool thing. So, there's a lot of good books out there. I
Hmm.
really like the Stolen World.
Hmm.
That's a great book. Really kind of eye opening to some of the early big reptile guys in the hobby. Lizard King was
Yeah, I
another
got
one.
that
Yeah,
Lizard King
yeah.
right handy. So yeah,
I think I
that's
like
another one.
Stolen World a little better.
Yeah,
Just maybe.
so I have not read Stolen
Mhm.
World yet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Get
I
that
need to
one.
do
And
that.
I think it's pretty cheap. Like you can
Yeah.
get it for not much. But I think it's more interesting to me because it kind of goes over some of the reptiles that I like. Like he's,
Hmm.
you know,
Kind of some of
yep. Hank
the
Molt and
yeah,
Tom Crutchfield out in Australia, or, that
the
kind of,
shifty past of the things that endear us now.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was actually there was an arrangement or something that where I think Hank Molt was supposed to bring in some Owen Pelly pythons that were captive bred. And like at the end of the book, they talked about how one of the names that they used in the book was a pseudonym. And then it's like, oh, I know who that is. Like, and
Mm,
they're like, and then he bred Owen Pelham pythons. I'm like, oh, there's only one guy that's bred Owen Pelly pythons up to that point. Like,
right.
okay, we know who that is. Unfortunately, he passed away recently. I don't know if you heard Peter
No,
Krause. Peter Krause passed away,
I didn't know that.
which is a huge, bummer. That
Yeah.
that guy was he had some knowledge, man. That guy was the bomb. But
Yeah.
I met him a couple times. The first time I met him, it was at one of those reptile symposia that I did over in Australia, and I sat down by him, and I was all excited to talk to him, and I tried to engage him. Man, he would not take the bait. It was like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Justin. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you." And then he'd turn away, and like, "Oh, okay." And then
Crap.
I'd ask him another question, and he'd give me like a 2-word answer, and then turn away. I'm like, "Okay, he doesn't want to talk to me, really." But then after I'd kind of I somebody vouched for me. I think Peter Birch vouched for me because Peter Birch is pretty good friends with Peter
Yeah.
Krause. And then at the next show I saw him at, we had nice discussions, and it was, he almost reacted to me like I was an old friend, so that was cool.
Yeah.
So I really feel bad that I didn't get get to know him better, talk with him more. But it would have been cool to see his place in action. And
Yeah.
but yeah, what a loss. Good guy. I mean, obviously, he was involved with a lot of shady stuff with Hank Molt and things back in the day.
Yeah.
But that was kind of how it almost went. I mean, there was just no other recourse,
How I
other
mean,
unless you're a zoo. Yeah,
how else do you get it done when you
exactly.
can't get it
And
done?
That's the reason we have diamond pythons and jungle carpets. A lot of, those
Well,
a
and
few
so
people, of
I
course.
mean, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so there's no importation exportation here. All right, well, you either settle for that or you do what you got to do to overcome that. And
Yeah, and
I mean,
I'm not necessarily condoning smuggling, or or nor would be involved with smuggling in any way. But I'm not going to condemn somebody for
just as a
committing.
disclaimer, folks.
Exactly. No, I mean, that's how I feel. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I got pulled in and searched on my trips over back and forth over to Australia, and I almost welcome that, because I could say, go ahead and search me. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing. All I have is photos. And yeah, I might have held some animals when I probably technically shouldn't have, or whatever, in the field, but we always let them go. We never collected them or took them anywhere or did anything with them.
But that was not a snake in your pocket. You were just
It was
happy
not.
to see
Yeah,
him.
they made sure that they checked my pockets, and yeah, I almost felt like Dwight Schrute, when Michael asked him if he was wearing a wire, and he like drops his pants and he lifts up his shirt to show he has no wire on that. Yeah. I thought about doing that. I thought that would be pretty funny, but they didn't. No.
They
Anyway.
didn't think that would be.
They didn't have very good sense of. I told them they were profiling me, and I'm like, I know exactly why you're pulling me in here, and I'm very disappointed and offended by this. That you think just because I like reptiles, I'm going to come and smuggle them. Thanks a lot, jerks. They're like, no, we would never profile. I'm like, oh, you just randomly picked up me and my friend from separate lines, that were on a trip to find reptiles and photograph reptiles. So anyway, that was kind of fun. But yeah, they let us go, and we didn't have anything, of course, and they didn't find anything. So it's I told them, I said, look, all the things I want from Australia are already in the US and being captive bred. So screw you.
Except Owen Pelly's.
Except Owen Pelly's, but
and I don't have those, okay?
Point.
Just so we're clear. Just so we're clear.
Yeah, I don't have the cash for those, but yeah. Nor are they available. But yeah, someday we'll see. I mean, John Weigel, he found a way to get Carinata over here, and
there is always a way.
Yeah.
There is always a way.
I think he understands, like, yeah, there's a desire for these things outside of Australia, and as long as there's no other legal way to get those out of the country, there's always going to be smuggling, and that's damaging to the wildlife of Australia. Mm-hmm. So why not change?
But I mean, is it?
What
is smuggling damaging to the wildlife of Australia? I get it coming in. I get it potentially
for some things, it could be.
But I mean, has Australia ever introduced non-invasive or invasive species to try and fix something, and then they fuck it all up?
Yeah. Well, I was trying to export some Stimson's pythons that I had imported from Europe back to Europe. Right. And I had the paperwork that I got them into the country with, that they stamped with their little stamp of approval. And then they told me, oh, these are not legal. And I'm like, well, why did you stamp the paperwork? Like, why did you let me get them if they're not legal? Like, I'm like, I do not understand. So anyway, I had gotten permits for Stimson the year before for Eastern Stimsons, and they didn't really specify Eastern or Western. It was just Stimson, and I got it on my permit to export. And then the following year, they're like, no, those are not legal to export, and we're not going to give you. And I said, you gave me a permit last year. Oh, we have no record of that. I'm like, here it is. This is the permit. Well, we have no record of it. So I'm like, I don't care if you have a record of it. You gave me one and I exported them. Like, give me a break. I was just like pulling my hair out. And they said, well, we need to do an ecological study to see if it would damage the wild population. I said, how would captive bred offspring have any impact on the populations in Australia? I said, I saw more dead on the road than I want to export to Europe. Like, give me a break. Yeah. Like, what are you people doing? And I just, like, they said, sorry, we're not going to do it. We couldn't determine if it would be how the if it would have a negative impact to the populations in Australia. I said, you guys are beyond help. Like, give me a break.
Yeah. Well, it's just like
yeah,
they make it up as they go. I mean,
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
like,
really.
like,
And it depends on whose desk it falls on, because the guy the year before gave me the permit, no
and
questions asked.
and that's what that's kind of how I feel, is like, is it you just grease the right wheel,
Yeah.
and it works out. Like, I mean,
Mm.
and
Yeah, it's silly.
and honestly, like, if that's the case, if it just takes some grease on a wheel, fucking grease the wheel and let's go. Because
Yeah. How do you
otherwise it's
grease it though?
stupid.
That's the
Well,
problem, is it's like, well, now where they've, I don't agree with that paper that says everything's children's pythons, but heck, I'll just export them as children's pythons,
right,
because technically they are, right? In the
right.
scientific literature, it's been said they're children's pythons. So they have
Well,
no,
sir, we don't recognize that
well, no, they
that
recognize,
particular piece of
yeah,
literature. I
but
mean, that you
they,
know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
the rule is whatever we say the rule is on
exactly.
whatever
Yeah.
day we say it. Like,
Yeah.
that's literally. I mean, I feel like I deal with some of that in my job. Is,
Mhm.
federal workers like to tell people no, and it's like,
Yeah.
you go back and you try to find out why you can't do something, and you're like, there's nothing. It's just because because somebody will have to work to, if they say yes to you, and rather than say yes to you, they just give you some bullshit reason and say no, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much
Yeah.
what it is. So,
Oh, we deal with that all the time with our select agent labs in the, with our
mhm.
virus labs, trying to, there's some viruses and other pathogens that are listed as select agents. So they have huge amounts of red tape and paperwork, and you got to follow all these protocols. And they come and inspect us every year, and they always have something that, oh, we're doing wrong, or that we messed
Mhm.
up on. And we're just like, well,
The best way to
we've
handle
been doing
those,
this for 15 years, and why didn't you see this 15 years ago? Or it's like,
you just give them
yeah,
low hanging fruit. You just, like,
yeah,
give
yeah,
them an easy one. Let them write them down. Let them shake their finger at
exactly.
you. Walk away.
Yeah,
Strutting and walking, and just move on with
yeah.
your life.
It's yeah, they just almost have to justify their own jobs,
Hmm.
because it's
That's
otherwise,
exactly.
because we haven't had any real issues.
Yeah,
There's been a
that's
couple things they
exactly.
made a very big deal of that were not in reality big deals, but what are you
Well, and
gonna
if they're making big deals out of small things, then you're doing okay. It's
do?
when
Yeah,
they're making big deals out of
exactly.
big things that you're probably
Well,
not doing
and it's
so
funny
good.
because they're the it's their own. The NIH was the ones that found that vial of smallpox on the the
Yeah.
lyophilized smallpox on their shelves in some random lab somewhere. The person retired, and they got to clean it out, and they're like, oh, there's a vial of lyophilized smallpox on the. Oh, okay, that's a good thing to just have
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, but then that triggers like all this different, regulations on
Yep.
everybody else. Yeah.
Well,
The the
it's that
politician in
neat.
the hot tub with the hookers philosophy, like they mess up, so then they regulate everybody else to that
Yeah.
standard. It's like,
Yeah.
it's your own people that are breaking the standard. Yeah. Sad, sad.
Damn you, hookers and hot tubs! How dare you?
It's those politicians, man. You can't blame the
No,
hookers.
I don't know. Have you ever been a politician?
They'll blame it on the hookers. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, is that our show? Are we done? Do we want to get into a fight, or do you have anything else we need
I
to
just came here to
chat
talk about
about?
hot tubs and hookers.
Okay. Well, that's what we should change the name of the podcast to.
Hot tubs and hookers, dude. We would totally
Uh,
increase our. It would be a one show and done type of thing. Like, they're like, what the fuck is this? I thought I was gonna get hot tubs and hookers. This is reptile. What the fuck is this? That would be
They're
it. It
talking
would be,
about snakes. What is
yeah.
wrong with these
We
guys?
would have to cut the
Yeah.
show down to about 15 minutes, and we would get high viewership for one episode only.
And for like 30 seconds
Yeah,
until they
yeah.
figured out.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the sad thing. Well, let's talk. Let's fight. Let's
Okay.
do something.
Reptile Hooker Club.
Yeah. How about we talk about anthropomorphism?
Anthropomorphism.
So
That's a fun word.
Yeah, what is that? When you're giving your reptile like thinking it's thinking in human terms. Is that kind of a good definition,
Mm-hmm.
or putting things in human terms that projecting,
Projecting your human needs or wants
or
on,
biases,
or
yeah,
biases. Sure.
function. Yeah,
Okay. Biases is
yeah.
fine.
Maybe like for an example, like you have a python, and somebody, oh, that python needs to exercise more because it's fat. Well, is it, that's what you would say if a human was overweight, like, oh, you need to exercise more. But as an ambush predator, do they really need to exercise to maintain, they're designed to sit still and sit in one place for days or months at a time. So do
That
they really
said,
need
though,
to
I mean,
exercise?
but
You know,
what if you're a fat ass snake? I mean,
then feed it less. Yeah. That's
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
okay, all right,
I don't know.
maybe,
Maybe exercising will get the gut,
yeah,
the gut
yeah.
factory
I
moving.
mean,
But
it doesn't need to
anyway,
do like 80 style jazzercise, but
hey, we're not even fighting yet, man. What are you attacking me? No.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying they don't jazzercise. Like I agree with
Yeah,
you. I agree
yeah,
with
yeah,
you.
exactly.
I'm on your
So,
side. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
so we're gonna talk about the kind of what pros and cons of anthropomorphism, or if it's okay in some instances, like is anthropomorphizing okay sometimes, or if it's
Sure.
always bad, or if it's always negative.
Oh,
Ooh,
I
you
heard
heard
it.
the
I heard it.
coin. You know
Yeah.
it's coming. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I will let you call it in the air, and we'll see what happens.
It's tails.
It's tails and it's heads. I'm sorry, my friend.
God damn.
Yeah, I mean
I said like that like I own that coin and
you
it didn't
did.
work.
You
It
did.
did
You're
not
very
work.
confident. Yeah.
Ah, well.
Hey, you got cocky after your win last time. So
Yeah.
what do you do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, um, I'll take the negative side of anthropomorphism, that it's
What?
not the best thing. I'm
All
going to
right.
take the easy side, I think. But and you can take the anthropomorphism isn't that bad all the time. So I'll let you go ahead and start us out, my friend.
Okay. So anthropomorphism not being a bad thing. I mean, I definitely can see a case where anthropomorphism, doesn't necessarily result in anything negative. I think there's probably certain levels of things that, um, oh, my snake needs me to hug it because I like hugs and therefore my snake will like hugs. Well, no, I mean,
They
we
do like
can,
to squeeze. I mean, come on.
I do agree with that, but they usually eat it after they squeeze it.
That's true.
So
That's true.
yeah, if I mean,
It's
I
a
guess
love-hate thing. It's
it depends on your end goal, maybe, perhaps. Um, so them being squeezers does not mean they like to be hugged. But that said, I don't think that all anthropomorphism is bad. I think, I like I think my lizard likes to sit on my lap and watch TV with me, and maybe you're like, maybe your leg's warm, and that's not and it's warmer than the rest of the area around that. And the lizard is like, all right, I'm not super cool with this because I don't like to be held because I'm a lizard and not a human. But this is warm. I'm not being hurt. Things are okay. So maybe this is okay. And so maybe just the idea that uh that animals will tolerate levels of anthropomorphism. I think anthropomorphism can be dangerous or it can be grossly benign, and so it's kind of at the level that you're doing anthropomorphism. And I mean, I do definitely think though, like if what's the point? What's the point of keeping reptiles, right? Why do we keep reptiles? Because we get something out of it, right? Us as
Mhm.
humans. So
Yeah.
if we get something out of it, like now, do we always have to project everything like everything human onto our reptiles? No, but if having a monitor that sits with us while we do something, or I feed my monitor every day, from the table, because it jumps up on the chair, and it's funny because it's like it's eating at the table with us, that, like, I think that's fine. You know what I mean? That's a human thing. Like, the monitor just wants food. It doesn't care if it's at the table. It just is smart enough to know, oh man, this idiot's eating. If I jump up on the chair right now, he'll probably give me some food, because that's what he does, right? So,
well, I would have let it go if it was like bearded dragon, but monitor, I don't know. I think if you've got a monitor sitting on your lap while you're watching TV, it's not thinking at all, because it's not at its preferred body temperature. I think one of the worst anthropomorphic views that we've had in regards to monitor lizards is that keeping them temperatures above 150 degrees or whatever, like a basking spot, would kill it. I mean, that was widely held. And you had a bunch of monitors that were like lap dogs, and everybody's like, oh, my monitor, he's so tame. Look at my tame monitor. And they'd walk around shows with a croc monitor on their shoulder. Oh, he's so tame. Well, get him up to his preferred body temperature and then try to pull that crap and tell me he's tame and happy to sit on your shoulder. He's going to be clawing the crap out of you and biting your face, right? I mean, you get a monitor up to their preferred body temperature and they are not going to sit still, and they're not going to. Now, I'll give you this. Okay. So like in their natural habitat, water monitors are very, like in some cities in Southeast Asia, they're very closely associated with human habitation. They're eating from the trash. They're eating stuff they probably wouldn't normally eat. They're giant, they're very used to humans walking around them and stuff. And they're not really, they're almost like a squirrel in the park, And I will say that
a big
animals that
squirrel.
are, yeah, very big squirrel. Like that's an Owen squirrel right there. But
Oh
anyway,
my God.
bigger than an Owen squirrel. So
Is there anything bigger than an Owen squirrel? Isn't that like a squirrel squatch?
yeah, but I will say, like, that attitude of like, they can eat from the table or I can hold them on my lap all the time. It's probably not the best thing for the monitor, and it's not something the monitor is choosing. I think they're just going because they're cold and they can't think straight when they're cold. They can't act properly. Once you heat a
Wow.
monitor up to
Are you speaking for all monitors right now?
I am. I will unequivocally speak. That's exactly what they are saying.
Oh my God.
They are not thinking correctly.
Well,
And once
first
you,
of all, hold on,
yeah.
because if it is okay, so if you do set, you do set the monitor down on your lap, and it's like trying to move away, and after a while, it just sits there. Okay, so it's not going to be at its basking body temperature, but there's something between its basking body temperature and probably its resting body temperature where the sun's not out or it's not basking, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to sit at 100 degrees, or I get that, I get what you're saying, but there's in between.
Well, the monitors are not really an in between. Like, that's why I said I give you another one, but I'm not going to give you monitors, because like they're not out when it's cold. Like, they're out when the sun's out. They're a heliothermic animal, and they
Well,
are designed to run high octane at hot temperatures and like hot basking
But why
spots.
are they not out
Generally,
why are they not out when it's not warm?
because it's not hot enough, and they
Okay.
can't get to their
But
preferred body temperature,
there's no
and they
point.
can't think.
And there's no point. And
Yeah,
so it's warmer for them
because
to be hidden
because they're in
away.
danger. Yeah, they
Right.
something's going to eat
I
them or
understand
whatever.
that. But
So
sitting on your lap is not danger
yeah, that's
unless you're
true.
sitting out, unless you're
Fair
like,
point. Yeah.
unless you're, you're
But to say
it's snowing and you got your
it's for
door
the
open and you're sitting there watching it snow with your
but
monitor.
but to say it's for the monitor and that he's happy sitting there on your lap, no, he's not.
That's not what I said.
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
He might tolerate it
I
or
said
can't move because he's cold.
it's for
It's for
you.
us. Yeah.
It's for you to sit with your monitor.
Uh-huh.
The monitor tolerates it. Doesn't necessarily like it. Maybe it's not at its perfect body temperature.
Yeah, I don't think it's
but when you're
tolerated. I
done,
think
when
it's
you're
like,
done, when you're done, letting it, you put it back in its cage, and it has all of its, its proper husbandry needs met.
Mhm.
just a little doesn't hurt the monitor in the long term,
and
right?
I guess that
And that's
it's
what I'm
coming.
saying is as long as you're taking care of the big stuff, those little types of anthropomorphic interactions or events are not, long-term detrimental to the reptile.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean,
And I made that point on a group, on a genus that you just can't, that you almost just lost your mind on me over, just making that point too.
Well, and that's, that was kind of the revolution that occurred with monitor keeping and breeding, was back in the 90s or 80s or whatever. That's how monitors were kept. They weren't given the correct temperatures because, again, we thought that they would die if they had a basking spot of 150. Now we know that they actually probably require a basking spot of 150 just to function normally, to get them up to their preferred body temperature. And that's not to say their preferred body temperature is 150 degrees Fahrenheit, but that they need that intense heat to get to their preferred body temperature. And then they go about their, whatever they need to do. But before that, we were keeping them with a hot, a basking temperature of like 90 degrees. And they were just sitting there like a bump on a log, getting fat. They'd live a long time because they were basically in cryopreservation, too cold to get old, but they weren't really breeding or thriving. But since that time, since we've figured things out a little better.
See, but that's kind of weird to me though. Like, and I'm not trying to debate like the whole monitor thing now,
it
but
sounds like you are.
No,
you're going down, man.
Well, okay. So if what we did, if what we learned, was that they need that high 150 potentially plus access to a heat source like that, and anything less like 90, and they just sit there like a bump in a log, get fat, and live a long time. All of that does not like there sounds like there's something in between that. You know what I mean? Like I guess the whole like not meet their needs, let them get fat, but they still grow old a long time and live a long time. Like that seems a little weird to me. So maybe there's a difference between marginal and ideal, and they don't suffer, gross longevity effects between marginal and ideal, right? Like,
yeah, I guess I can't necessarily say they were living a long time or whatever. Like they were dying of, liver failure or something because they were overweight, but they weren't behaving like they would in the wild, right? Okay. And that's kind of, I guess.
Thanks for backtracking on that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. But that's basically what I say is we were not meeting their physiological needs.
Agreed.
Because we thought, oh, they're fine. They're tame. They're happy. They're sitting on my lap and eating pizza from the table or whatever.
What's wrong with pizza, dude?
For a monitor.
Sorry, if I'm gonna take the anthropomorphic side, I'm gonna go all the way.
Yeah, because they love wheat based
pepperonis. They like pepperonis,
and, tomatoes.
And sausage.
If they just eat the sausage and pepperonis, that's fine.
It's they love that. They are meat lovers.
Yeah. So, I think that attitude of like, oh, I'm interpreting what he wants from how I would be behaving, like, oh, he's looking at me like he wants food. That means he's hungry. No, that means he's genetically programmed to always find a meal. And if he finds one, to take it because he doesn't know when the next one is coming. That's what he's thinking,
Well, but, okay. But at the same time, if you're a person and you're watching your monitor and you're keeping it at this 85-degree basking spot and it's just sluggish and it's not running around and it's not doing things, and then for whatever reason you warm it up and all of a sudden it starts getting active and you're like, wait a minute, when I'm sluggish, it's because I'm not feeling good, or I'm not like I'm cold and it makes me like tired or whatever. But you know what? When it's warmer out and I can move around more, I feel better. Like maybe that's what the monitor needs. Like, aren't you anthropomorphizing when you do that?
Yeah, I mean, if you do it that way, yeah. I would
So,
say.
so not in all cases, anthropomorphism is a bad thing.
Sure, sure. But I mean, you're missing the mark to some extent because you're not basing it on reality, you're basing it on your perception. So
Well,
you
isn't that
might
what
get
anthropomorphism
I guess
is?
it's the whole you know, I'd rather be lucky than good, but you
I
can learn,
would.
and I think that's why things change is because you're out in the wild observing one. And
I would rather be
I think a
lucky than
lot of
good is
it
how I live on this podcast. I just want to get that point. I
well,
got to
you are not lucky at all.
well, not in
Your luck
coin
is
tosses.
horrible. Yeah.
All
That's
right,
the only
maybe I
luck
don't
there
even
is
do good.
here. Like
Maybe I don't even do good fighting you. I retract my
no, your
statement.
fights are much better than your coin
Oh
tosses.
God.
But I mean that's why you know Frank Reedy's kind of you know changed the way we think about monitors in a lot of ways. At least for me, there's probably others that figured this out too. But you know, I listened to a lot of Frank's ideas, and some were a little you know out there. But the one that really was the you know they need the heat and they need to eat a lot in order to reproduce, and you know he kind of revolutionized that and demonstrated that they could still live a long time. But I think you know a lot of it was people didn't like you know and most of the monitors that were imported were like you know Nile monitors and savannas and white you know
Yeah,
black throat monitors,
you get
the
them up
things
to
that
temperature
once you
and
get
they're
them to temperature
evil.
and they're
Yeah,
yeah
they'll
they're
try to
gonna
kill
whip you
you.
and bite you
Yeah,
and
of
crap on you,
course.
so it's like yeah I don't
Right.
want them to be hot, I want them to
Yeah.
be this happy little lap monitor. So again that anthropomorphic view was not good for the monitor, and that resulted in a lot of you know untimely deaths or just non-existence. Basically if you're just sitting there not doing what you were evolutionarily programmed to do, what's the point? You know, why live? And you know, yeah, you could say, well, the people are getting something out of it, but ultimately, you know, animals aren't there for us, right? We're trying to help them. We're trying to keep them in a way that can allow them to behave like they're supposed to behave, right?
I would dispute your comment about
And
animals are not for us.
and
I
now
would say that this whole thing is all about animals being for us.
yeah, but there's being for us completely, and there's being for us at the benefit of the animal. So what I'm saying is this was for us that was in no way benefiting the animal, right? Other than
Well,
maybe a
I
free
think there's
meal.
probably I mean
But
there's benefit to the animal,
you can
but
keep somebody in prison and feed them every day. That doesn't mean they're happy about it. You know what I mean? So anyway, we're and I don't know, maybe they're not happy at all being
yeah,
in
dude,
a
why are
cage.
you
Yeah.
making judgments about who
That's an anthropomorphism. It's something
yeah.
it's hard to escape, right?
There's
But
institutionalism is a thing.
but I
No,
do
and I'm
think
not
there's
saying that
you know
jail's like
yeah.
fun. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that. I'm not saying that.
There's a you know, I guess Kevin McCurley's probably one of the better examples of this with monitors nowadays is how he's socializing monitors, you know, and has a lot of YouTube videos on that showing how he does it. And a lot of people are saying, "Oh, these monitors I got from Kevin are pretty easy going. They let me handle them. They don't crap and bite and scratch or whatever. They're a lot more tolerant of me, or they'll come and climb up my arm and sit on my shoulder and things like that, you know. So I do think that it's possible to have a good middle ground where the animal's not freaked out every second thinking, you know, oh, this guy's going to eat me or whatever. And they're also kept at appropriate temperatures, and you know their natural history requirements are met. And I think that's a you know a line that we're shooting for, right? Where
Sure.
we get enjoyment out of it, but the animal also does. Now you can keep reptiles like you keep fish, where you don't interact with them other than to observe them or watch them, and
But I
you
mean,
just want a slice of Australia in your living room, you know, and you're
yeah,
watching,
and I mean that
and you can get enjoyment from that.
I think that example you gave about Kevin McCurley, basically working with his captive bred monitors to make them more social.
Mhm.
One, yeah, absolutely. That's kind of a thing, and I think you know to the degree of like how social are monitors. Like some are pretty social, some are not so social, right?
Define social. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I would say like Ackies do fairly well in groups, right? They do
Mhm.
much better. Whereas like I don't do Parentes hang out in group like Komodos
Yeah.
tend to kind of hang out in groups a little bit. So I would say like some animals are, or some monitors are a little more social than others.
Well,
Are they
Komodos
as
hang out
social
in
as,
groups, when
like,
there's
yeah,
a carcass.
when they're killing
But
stuff?
if they're just cruising around, they'll eat their own species. They'll
Right.
eat juveniles of their own, whatever they can fit down their
Hey,
gullet.
co-op to grow up, dude.
So
Yeah,
parentes, that kind of
yeah,
thing.
sure.
Yeah.
But I guess my point
Yeah.
being that, so you're kind of anthropomorphizing a little bit to say like, all right, I want this monitor to be social with me, crawl up my arm, hang out on my shoulder, dude, look at me, my monitor likes me, hangs out with me. And you're using training techniques, or you're using socialization techniques in order to kind of structure anthropomorphism. And maybe we're bending the definition of what anthropomorphism is
No,
then
you're
a
right.
little
Yeah.
bit, but
Yeah.
I generally think most people, when they think, or when you talk about anthropomorphism, take it as a net negative thing. It's something that you do that is entirely human, that works against the animal. And I think trying to argue for anthropomorphism, I obviously, you can see the argument I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
But in the context of the word anthropomorphism, it's generally always a net negative, because it's anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism would be a positive. The definition of anthropomorphism almost leads you to a negative, no matter what, right? So
Yeah.
I think you can totally find great examples of negative anthropomorphism, in the plentiful.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about dressing up our reptiles to wear a top hat or a mustache or something.
Let's boop the snoot.
Yeah. That just leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
I can't. Man, like, honestly, so what? Like, I mean, does your snake like it? No. But does your snake benefit from being captive bred and born and living without predation and having clean food source and being well taken care of? And yes, the motherfucker may have to wear a hat once in a while and get its snoot booped. Look, Owen will have his pound of flesh.
He'll be rolling in his grave. No, he doesn't listen to other podcasts. He only listens to his own voice. Yeah. The soothing sounds of Owen.
Sounds of Owen McIntyre. That, I feel like that's like a slow jazz album in the making right there. The smooth, slow sounds of Owen McIntyre. but I don't, I get it. Like, when we see it as people who take ourselves probably too seriously in reptiles, we're like, that is the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen. Who does that? The animal obviously doesn't like that. Well, okay, but why do we keep snakes? Because we like snakes. And if we can make a snake look cute and people laugh, oh, ha, 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 that Tic Tac's so funny. He's got a hat on. Ha, ha, ha. Look, somebody drew arms on him. Ha, ha, ha. Like, so what? I mean, we hate it.
It might make them look less like a monster to some people that absolutely think snakes are monsters, and then they see a hog nose and a top hat and they're like, well, maybe they are kind of cute.
Maybe they're like, look at that stupid looking monster.
Some redeeming qualities. Yeah, look at that cute little horrible thing. Kill it now. I appreciate that view, and I'll give you points for that one. I mean, yeah, definitely. All anthropomorphisms aren't necessarily harmful. And I think that's that's where we need to figure out where the line is and draw that line. And I think the monitor thing is a great example of that, where we determine that, okay, this is not working for the monitors. They're not behaving like they would in the wild. What do we need to change to get them to behave that way? And then we go, okay, now that they're behaving that way, who wants to keep them? Like, wow. And so then they need to maybe adjust for other things, like, okay, we need to make them social, or we need to make them so they're not wanting to kill us every time they see us. And, I don't necessarily think that's anthropomorphism, because like I said, the example of the Southeast Asian water monitors, they're used to human presence and people walking around in the parks, and they're not like going out and tail whipping them
I mean,
and
I
biting
do
and
kind of
stuff.
think there
But if
is
you
some
did, if you try to
anthropomorphism
grab
there,
them,
right?
you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
yeah.
but I mean, like, okay, so you want your monitor to interact with you, right?
Hmm.
And you had this wild caught water, a Nile monitor, right? And when it's cool, it's fine and it interacts with you, right? So you're like, oh, that's what I want. So keep it cool. Got it, right? Where versus you warm it up and you're like, holy shit, this thing is scary and it wants to kill me. And you work with it. You're like, okay, maybe I get a captive bred one that has been worked with, and it's now it's socialized and it's not trying to kill me, even though it's being so in the instance where anthropomorphism can be bad, but if the issues around why you're directing the anthropomorphism are corrected, and you implement new things like socialization techniques and things like that, all of a sudden the anthropomorphism isn't necessarily bad.
Yeah, from as long as it's not damaging to the animal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So you can see an instance where anthropomorphism, oh my god, anthropomorphism definitely bad. Keeping an animal at suboptimal temperatures, because when they warm up to their preferred body temperature, they're like murder, death, kill, right? Versus socializing and acclimating them and breeding them in captivity, and down the road you get something that is a far cry from that
Yeah,
wild
but I
caught
mean,
specimen.
you're not letting the anthropomorphism dominate your reason and the methods for your madness, right?
I
You're
don't
saying,
know.
no, listen out. So
All right.
you got you're observing them in the wild and saying this doesn't match what I'm seeing in the wild, and so you say something's off. These guys aren't living long; they're getting fat. These things I see in the wild are not fat; they're sleek, and so and then you're saying, okay, well, when I when I try to handle the monitor, he rips me apart. Well, how are you grabbing? I mean, are you grabbing it by the neck and the tail and lifting it? Of course it's going to, freak out if that. What would
Right.
you do if somebody tried to pick you up like that? But if
It
you
depends
can,
on how big they are. If they're really big, they may be able to just do it, and I can't do a whole lot
yeah,
about
you
it.
could do it, but you're not
Yeah.
going to be happy about it. You're
No,
probably
definitely
gonna
not.
I guarantee you're gonna crap on them. That's that. And so I don't blame them.
You have clearly pinned my tactic down. Thank
I
you.
have just
Yes.
visualized this many
Yes.
times. Like if
Yes.
somebody grabbed Chuck, I guarantee. No. But
Projectile pooping. That is my
and so
secret weapon.
maybe also observing him in the wild, you might get an interaction with a monitor if you're feeding him in a park or something. People do that and they come right up to you. Sometimes they're a little aggressive, like give me food, and they're climbing up your leg or something. And if you
Are
don't
we
have
talking
food,
about people in the park, or are we talking
we're
about
talking
monitors?
about monitors in the
Okay, all
parks.
right. I was
Yeah.
like, damn,
Trying
I
to
don't
get
go to your
food from
park,
people.
bro. That
Yeah.
sounds aggressive.
I mean, you might get some aggressive people asking for food some places, but so these monitors are used to people, and they're not. They see them as a food source, and if they and same with like monkeys or something. If the monkeys can startle a tourist, they can usually get away with grabbing like they're they're holding some food. The monkeys will grab it and run away with it, and the people are like, whoa. So sometimes humans can get outsmarted by the animals. The animals can think and reason. And so I think as long as we can understand that, okay, according to their natural history, if they're up to temperature, if I grab him by the neck and the tail, he's probably not going to be happy about that. But if I feed him, he sees me and I put my hand under him instead of on, grabbing down on him, maybe he'll let me pick him up. And if I do that over and over and he sees, okay, this is not a threat to me, I'm not being hurt, then you're working with the natural history of the animal, and you're fulfilling your anthropomorphic need to interact with the animal, but you're not letting it be guided by anthropomorphism. You're letting it be guided by the natural history of the animal. And so, I think that's kind of more of the way we solve these issues and how we have these anthropomorphic interactions is through, understanding the animals at a more natural history basis.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I just had this image of a monitor being like, whoa, this is not how you handle me. Would you just please
tickle my chin first, and then
will you please just take
least
care and exercise my natural history.
at least buy me a meal before you pick me up, buddy. Come on.
Whoa. Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Now you're anthropomorphizing for sure. Come on.
So no, I hear that. I guess I hear that. I mean,
I'm trying to think, other damaging, I think the big one is that overfeeding thing when you think, oh, he's hungry. Look at him. Look at me. He, with those puppy dog eyes, he really wants to eat. Well, if you walk in, if you have a green tree python, they're always looking at you like that. And in the wild, they probably eat maybe once a month or twice a month, but they're always looking for food, and they climb up and down a tree every day to find food. And then when they do find food, if they get a meal, they disappear for several days, and they don't come back up and down. And so they're, you might get that in captivity, but if we're keeping them really hot and, that's kind of the things, I want my animal to get big so it can make eggs for me. I think that's a damaging anthropomorphic view of it's here for me, it's here to make me money or to make me babies or whatever, and that can be a damaging view, anthropomorphic as well. So
would you say that reptile breeders are highly anthropomorphic?
Oh my goodness. No, I think anytime you're equating something with money, that's definitely a human view. Animals aren't there going, how am I going to make more money? How am I going to pay the bills? Oh man, I'm worried about this month. I'm just coming up short.
I told you this was going to turn into Reptile Hooker Fight Club.
Yeah. Man, the hookers are expensive these days. I gotta make some cash. Yeah. And those rock outcrops, they're not cheap.
They're not cheap.
They're not cheap.
Well, so yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that I don't know what I think anymore. No, I mean,
come on, Chuck. Come on.
I know. I'm just, I think that, there's so many examples, I think I think you can look at, when animals, like we try to feed them, they're not trying to feed, they're stressed out. And what do? Oh, we got to throw this at it. Try this, do that, rather than like, oh, the animal's not eating because it's fucking stressed out. Like, or maybe it's sick, or maybe it's, so, I definitely think there's multiple ways that we anthropomorphize that are deleterious to the longevity and life of reptiles. But I don't necessarily think that all anthropomorphism is detrimental in the long run.
Well, and to your point, I mean, we have to use our brains to figure out some things, and we can definitely miscall natural history. We can definitely miscall what an animal needs based on what we think it needs, based on what we interpret its natural history to be. So, it's really hard to get away, I guess, if you consider that anthropomorphism, because you're looking at it from how you would expect it to work, even though if it's completely off base. But I don't think that's
anthropomorphism, though. If you were looking at it from how you think it would work for you, that's anthropomorphism.
Well, yeah, I mean,
right? I mean, because it's about projecting you.
Why are you interpreting it that way? It's probably because that's how you would think if you were in the situation. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to know what an animal thinks. And so are we thinking along their wavelength? Are we thinking along our own wavelength? Of course, we're thinking along our own wavelength because it's the only wavelength we can think along.
Right.
Except for maybe.
Unless you can get right on down to that.
Yeah. Well, I think Frank he's more, he thinks better as an animal, I think, in some ways than a human. Yeah, his human skills are a little lacking, maybe you could say. But he's got a lot of enemies. But anyway, that's the trick, I guess, is to interpret natural history.
We should just call them non-friends. I think that's a much lighter way to say it.
That's a very anthropomorphic view. I think you need to look at the natural history of.
You just need to respect my natural history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess overall, if you're guiding what you're trying to do with your animals, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it. We
Mm-hmm.
could say if you have to handle the animals all the time, that's maybe an anthropomorphic, objective, and that's maybe deleterious to the animals. And for some animals, it might be. For others, it might not be. My cousins had a veiled chameleon that was very used to handling, and it would
Mm-hmm.
just sit in their living room and eat and be happy. And uh, from what you could tell, it was a very well fed,
It seemed happy.
seemed it had a big smile on its face.
There you go. There you go.
It's very difficult to not anthropomorphize things, right? But
I mean, you
it
were your
didn't
best
try to.
frame of reference, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it didn't try and bite them all the time. It didn't,
yeah.
try to get away all the time. It just kind of sat there. And maybe it was, I don't know, overwhelmed, or the corticosteroid levels were so high that it couldn't even function. But, it lived it lived a lot
was
longer
just
than
paralyzed with
yeah.
fear the entire time.
Because they said, "Hey, we got this veiled chameleon. What should we do?" And like, "Oh, we're handling it all the time." And I'm like, "Don't handle it so much." Like, I'm trying to give them, what I think
Like,
they should be
whatever
doing.
your natural instinct is, don't do that.
Exactly. Chameleons are not the
Yeah.
touchy feely pets or whatever. But this one lived longer than I thought it. A male veiled chameleon should have lived. It lived 5, 6, 7 years or whatever. And I'm like, that's not bad. And it seemed, they were fulfilled with its life, and it seemed to have a long and relatively reasonable life, and they paid a lot of attention to it. And so, is it the animal adapting to our needs? Maybe sometimes,
Sure.
Yeah. But was it kept probably the best way to meet its natural history needs? Probably not. And
Yeah.
and are any of us keeping our animals the best way to meet their natural history needs?
You're damn
Probably
right I
not.
am. Oh,
You might be,
yeah.
Chuck, but
No, I don't know.
me and the rest of us,
Yeah.
we'll aspire to Chuck level at some point. But no, I
Just-
mean, we do the best we can, right?
Sure.
And in some cases we don't do the best we can. In some cases,
sometimes the best we can sucks.
Sometimes we're just trying to shove them in the smallest box as possible and get as much money out of each animal as possible. And
I mean,
that's the unfortunate side of things, I guess.
Sometimes shoving them in the smallest box possible is what is the best thing for them, because they're so flipped out by so. I mean, it's like, I don't know, man. It is a tough thing, and I absolutely think we anthropomorphize stuff, and the whole keeping of animals is for us.
Yeah.
It's for, otherwise it's like, it is. It's very human centric, and so
the way anthrocentric, or is it anthropomorphic?
Well, it's both. It's both. It's both.
Yeah.
So it's anthrocentric because that's what we desire, but it's anthropomorphic because we elicit certain behaviors that we need because we keep those animals. Like, I want to feel like this animal recognizes me or wants to hang out with me or whatever. You know what I mean? And to be honest with you,
feels out of the relationship that we are,
sure,
it's happy and I'm happy, so we're
and if we're keeping animals, why are we keeping them? Because we get some anthropomorphic something out of it. Like, if you just got nothing out of it, why would you keep them?
Well, I mean, a lot of times you don't get a lot out of, like, a python. They don't do a lot, so they'll crawl around from time to time. But if
you want something like that in your life because you like to watch it and it behaves differently than you, and that's your desire to kind of have something that's different from yourself, and that you can behave, so watch something live its life that is so different from yours. That's all your want, all your need, all you. That's all you. Does the snake want that? No, the snake does not need that. You know what I mean? So and I get it. It's not like, I get that's a little bit of a bendy. It's a little bendy, but you get what I'm saying. Like, and so I guess where I'm kind of going, if I'm gonna do my wrap up, is that I think that anthropomorphism does jump into even the keeping, the breeding, the everything that we do in with reptiles. It's when we fail to engage with the animals in an articulate way, that we understand that that these animals are different than us. They biologically are different from us. Their needs are different from ours. And when we elicit our own needs, like how we exist as humans on them, it's not a good outcome. We need to engage in the needs that they have, and keep them like you keep something, like the example I gave of the monitor, where you correct the husbandry, and then all of a sudden the thing is much more lively, and then you teach it to be a little more social, and that allows you to interact with it. Then you can have a non-detrimental anthropomorphism, right? It's, you're yes, it's not what the animal wants, but it's being kept as a pet, like, and it is getting some benefits from being with humans, from a predator predation, from a longevity of care, things like that. So yeah.
Cool. Well, I gotta go. My geckos, if I don't give them their snuggles at night, they just can't get to sleep. So, come on, give it up. That was good.
That was great.
That was great.
That was great. You know what? Don't force me to laugh at your human jokes.
Yeah, that was definitely an anthropomorphic joke.
Yes.
The lizards just don't get it. I tell them, all the time.
Yeah, because all my geckos look at me like, oh shit, is this motherfucker gonna try and come in this cage? Because I'm running for it. I'm out of here.
Mine are always like, food. Are you gonna feed me?
I have one male Grandis that like will just sit there, and I can go in there and I can pet him, and like I could even try to pick him. Does not care.
Yeah.
Every single other gecko I have is like, fuck this, we're out of here, and they'll bolt, man.
And that's another thing. I mean, it may be an anthropomorphism, but we, there's individual attitudes and individuals.
Definitely.
Definitely. And that's, evolutionarily beneficial if you have different ways of doing things.
And it kind of goes to
might be more beneficial. And
it kind of goes to the idea that, maybe not all anthropomorphism is bad, because some animals tolerate that anthropomorphic whatever way better than others, because they are individuals, right?
Yeah.
So
I guarantee there's probably some water monitors out there that are like, I'm not getting around people. I'm out of here. There's too many people, and they clear out and go live in a primary forest somewhere where human hand hasn't touched it, if there is such a place anymore. But they're out of there. So yeah,
for sure.
Oh man, I remember in Singapore, I got to go to the Singapore Zoo when I was at a work, a virus conference in Singapore. And by the way, that zoo is freaking awesome. It's one of the coolest zoos I've ever been to. But I was asking if there were, one of the zoo workers, I asked him if there were any monitors that were wild on the zoo grounds, and they're like, I'll go check down by the botanical gardens. So I go down the botanical gardens, and there's like a couple spitting cobras like under this rock, and nice. I'm like kind of going sideways to try to get closer to get some pictures of them. One was in shed, and it kind of stuck its head out and stayed out for a picture or two, but the other one was like gone, was on the other side of the same rock. So I'm walking, I'm like, holy crap, that's so cool to see wild cobras. That was the first wild cobras I'd seen. And then I go over and
then it spit in your face.
I wished. I was trying to
you were trying to elicit your,
yeah.
You're like,
like I said, I was moving sideways, so my eyes
your
weren't
natural
really,
behavior.
Yeah. I wanted it to come out and at least hood up or something, but it was like freaked out and sketched out and took off. But and then
you're an ugly dude, man. You probably scared the hell out of it.
I see this monitor across the way, so I go run over there. It's a clouded monitor. And so I start following it and taking pictures of it and stuff. And it runs up a tree and scares like a flying lizard, a Draco.
Yeah.
That jumps and glides to the next tree over. I'm like, holy crap, this place is so cool. I run over and I'm taking pictures of this Draco lizard, and it starts running up the tree, and there's another Draco up above it. And they start like doing this little combat, flaring their gular folds
Yeah.
and like, stretching their wings out to look tough to the other one. And the one chases the other one off. And then I hear this big crashing in the undergrowth. And there's a bigger monitor like running up this like culvert, like this, waterway that's like cement waterway. And so I go chasing after it and I jump down and it's like whipping me and like getting mud all over me. And I'm like, this is so cool. And so, yeah, it was pretty sweet. So that was a neat place.
And then the
to visit.
zookeeper came over and was like, "Sir,
You
what
need
are
to
you
get out of the
doing?
exhibits." Well, these are all wild on the
You
ground. It was
don't
pretty
work
cool.
here."
Yeah. But a lot of the exhibits were actually like open, like
Yeah,
the animals
completely accessible.
Yeah,
like you
could touch the animals. Like I was
pretty
in
crazy.
this big like arboreum or whatever you call them, the buildings where they have trees and stuff inside, and they had a bunch of lemurs just running around. And like I was sitting down on some stairs taking pictures of like some fruit bats that were flying around, and these lemurs ran by and like one bounced off of me and like kept going. I'm like, holy crap, this is a cool zoo. Like they if this was the US, they'd have so many lawsuits on their
No, and
hands.
that's exactly what I was just thinking. Is like, do the people there, they just like let the animal, they're not trying to like you see the YouTube video of the lady who walks up to the buffalo in like in like Yosemite and like gets fucking ran over by the thing. Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
How did you think that was gonna end?
The best
Like,
one was that lady that got the buffalo caught her belt on its horn.
Yeah, it
and
flips her. Yeah.
She's running or dragged off pantsless, and the buffalo runs away with her pants on its horn. Like, oh my gosh, people
so
are
lucky.
stupid.
She's lucky she
because
lost
they're
her pants.
anthropomorphizing.
Yeah.
Like it can be dangerous to be anthropomorphic. Like,
well done, Justin.
He wants
well
to pet
done.
me. Yeah. Oh god, he wants me to cuddle with him. He's a cuddly
But you
buffalo.
you weren't anthropomorphizing. You were just trying to get some pictures.
Oh yeah, I was just chasing a lizard, a big old lizard, the biggest lizard I'd seen. I think that was my first wild varanid, was in Singapore.
Cool.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Not to be your last.
No. I've seen a few. Yeah. I'm trying to think of, I can't remember my count, but I was making my way through the Australian varanids. Have quite a few of those.
You haven't had a chance to grab a parenti by the tail and the neck?
I have.
Have you?
But I didn't take that opportunity.
Yeah.
I just sat and took pictures of the thing, and
probably a good call.
Yeah, we did pick up
although I wish I could have. If you would have, I would have loved to hear the story of that.
No, we picked up a big Panoptes, man. That was like, so yeah. We were driving along a road in Western Australia, and I went to pass a semi, this road train, and it had like 3 freaking trailers on it, and it just kept going and going. And so I'm in the middle of passing this thing, and I've got Steve and Mike in the car, and all of a sudden there's a road train headed right for us, and I don't have time to make it. So I'm like, oh crap. And so I pulled off onto the shoulder, which is, feels like the right shoulder to pull off to if you're driving in America, even though, you're on the other side of the road passing a road train. And Steve and Mike are like looking at me like, dude, you almost killed us. Like, we almost died in the middle of Western Australia. And so not sure, not long after, I think we might've even seen it after we pulled off, but there was this big old Panoptes monitor walking along the road. And so we jump out and chase it, and it like takes off, and we're all, running after this thing, just giggling like little kids, and we catch up to it. And like Steve, it kind of goes into this brush, and Steve's like, Steve grabs it by the tail, and I'm like, he's like, grab it behind the neck. I'm like, you grab it behind the neck. This thing is huge. Like, it's going to take my arm off. And I'm like, okay, 1, 2. And I grabbed it by the neck, and it was not happy. It was like trying to bite me, and, very, very unhappy.
Yeah.
And it was a boy. It let us know,
Oh yeah.
Everting and, crapping on us and stuff. But, we took turns getting our wanker shots, and then we let him go. And after we let him go, like, he tripod, stood up on his hind legs and was like mouth open. And man, that thing had muscles like, oh my gosh, like a bodybuilder. They were huge, just ripped lizard, So there's an anthropomorphism for you. But yeah, that was there's been a couple instances of that where it's like, okay, grab it.
Was that the
You
first?
grab it. I'm
Was
not
that
going to
the
grab it.
first
You
time
grab
you
it.
almost killed Steve in Australia? I know there was more
Yeah,
than
that
one
was the
time that
first
Steve
time.
almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the second time was a little later. But yeah,
Yeah. All right.
we'll have to tell that story sometime.
Yeah. That is
Oh
a
man,
good.
yeah,
Both stories are good. I like that.
there's just some. I mean, yeah, we get a lot of it. It's seeing animals in the wild. There's just nothing that
Oh
matches
yeah,
that.
for
It's
sure.
really cool, and
Yeah.
we try to approximate that in our cages and stuff. But
No, it's not the same
just
thing.
no,
Yeah.
no. And to watch that thing run off, after we'd interacted. And there was another one. So on a separate trip when I went with Heidi, my wife, we were in just a little further south from where that happened. And we saw a big Panoptes walking along, and I saw it on the side of the road, and I'm like, that was a huge monitor. And so we turn around the car and go back, and it was gone. I couldn't see it. I'm like, oh, I swear he was right here. Like, where did he go? And so we kind of pulled off the road and just watched and just waited, because we were waiting for the sun to go down to go herping or whatever. And I'm like, what else do we got to do? Let's watch this monitor lizard, So we pull back a little bit, and sure enough, he comes out from under this bush, and he's going chowing on this DOR kangaroo, on the side of the road. And so we kind of pull up a little slower, and I guess he thought we weren't a big threat. So he just sat there chewing on this kangaroo, but he did definitely hold still. And they're very, like, even when you know where they are and you're looking right at them, they're hard to see, in their natural habitat. And so we just sat there and watched him for a bit. And then I got out of the car and I'm following him around, taking pictures and stuff. And he kind of hissed up a little, kind of stood up a little, like looking all tough. But that's they can be intimidating, those big monitors, man.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. The other one was when we were with Peter Birch in his home, where he lives, and we saw this Nick and I and Peter. We were walking around and saw this huge lace monitor. It was a big old lace monitor, and we're getting, it's letting us get pretty close to it. It didn't see us as a threat at all.
It's like, come on in, come on over. And so
I'm like right next to it, and it's just kind of like giving you that side eye, like, I see you. You better not mess with me.
Stupid? Like, what are you doing right now? Yeah.
And so Peter's like, grab it. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna grab it. Like, I don't want to go to the hospital. I want to herp, I want to be on this trip. And so he went over. He's like, oh, do I have to do everything? He picked it up, and so then the wanker shots weren't as cool. But then later on, I think it was even on a different trip. Yeah, it was with Steve and Mike. We went to Peter's house before we went to Western Australia, and we saw some lace monitors, and there was one, he grabbed it by the tail. He's like, okay, grab it. And I'm like, okay, time to redeem myself. So I grabbed it and by the neck, and it was a little smaller than the other one, but yeah, what do you do? So that was pretty fun. Frankly, I prefer just to follow them around, like watch them. There was one in northern Queensland, a lace monitor, just beautiful. It was really dark black and just really had a nice pattern. And I just followed that thing around as long as it would let me, and taking pictures and video and stuff. And after it had enough, it just kind of ducked out. And I left my kids, like I had 3 of my kids, and I took off following this monitor. I'm like, I'll be right back. And I followed it. Like 45 minutes later, I show up. They're like, where have you been? We've been sitting here in the jungle for 45 minutes, wondering if you're dead or whatever. I'm like, sorry guys, I really wanted to see that lizard. So it's kind of funny.
That is funny.
Yeah, I do like to chase around monitor lizards, but what do you do?
That's fair. I just want to say that when they're colder, it's easier.
It is. It's much. Well, no, they're in a burrow.
Yeah, well,
when it's colder.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Right. Well, good discussion, my friend.
Yeah.
We covered it all. Do you have anything else to add? Or are we good to go?
No, I think we're good to go.
All right. Well, we'll have a few more shows before the end of the year. It'll be nice to have a little Christmas break. I guess I just had a COVID break, so that was
that
was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But you got good plans.
But
for
did
Christmas?
you die? Did you die?
I did not die. I did not go to the hospital. I attribute that to vaccination, but that's just my humble expert opinion as a virologist. What do you, what do you got going for Christmas? You going anywhere? Are you sticking around?
Nope, we're sticking around. Just probably not too much. I feel like I got geckos that are probably going to be Christmas geckos getting born. I had a standing eye day gecko that hatched today. So I've got another one from that egg. There was 2 eggs, and then there's 2 more behind that, and then there's 2 more behind that. So I'm hoping that it's a standing eye Christmas. That would be awesome. Cool. So I've pretty much gotten.
Do they lay their clutches that close to each other?
So I have multiple females.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
yeah.
Do they do the month thing, or like every 30 days, or
no, definitely not.
I guess each type has different. I don't know.
It's weird. So from talking to other people, people get like maybe 2, maybe 4 eggs a year. But I mean, I've read that they'll lay up to like 12 eggs a year. Yeah. So it's like I feel like maybe there's something that we're missing, or maybe I'm missing, or maybe, I don't know. Like, it would be interesting to talk to people who have had, prolific success with standing eye. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, we were cruising around with Peter Birch and found like this like cache of gecko eggs, lifted up a slab of rock, and there were like 60 eggs under this slab of rock. It's like, must have been the right place to lay your eggs for a gecko. It was pretty cool.
Yep.
And there were a lot of the what were they? Oedura reticula, some little Oedura. They were kind of a smaller velvet gecko, but kind of cool.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I mean, once they kind of find that spot that works, that they'll go back there religiously. So
yep. So give them a good spot. Maybe that's all they need. So I got a bunch of new eggs from my Leptodactylus lubricus, the morning geckos. Yeah. So I don't even know if I'm saying the scientific name right, but anyway, that was.
I'll sick Nipper on you to. I'll tune you. He'll tune you up
on me.
Yeah,
niche.
Yeah.
I did hear him use that on the holiday show.
He pretty much got it. Yeah. But he
no, it was on the THP podcast.
I was going to say, because I didn't hear him. I don't think it was
on the holiday show.
Yeah, he didn't.
Which, if you haven't listened to the holiday show, listen to that. And also the THP episode. I think we already said that, but listen to that. It's good stuff. Lots of good stuff out there. Lots of good content. But the holiday show is fun. It's always fun. Our podcast is the 3rd most listened to podcast on the NPR network.
Crazy.
Yeah. Thanks you guys for putting us close to the top. We got to take over that darn Australian.
That's tough, podcast. Man. We're
coming for you guys. We're coming. Yeah, it's a good podcast. I've given them plenty of listens.
And Loafman's coming for us all. So
So all right. Well, I just got a low battery warning, and I don't have my charger down here, so we better wrap this up before it wraps up for me. So good discussion, my friend.
All right.
We will be back soon for another episode of Reptile Fight Club. We appreciate you listening, and check us out next week.
Anthropomorphize on.
Fight Club.